Hello, hello, hello. This is going to be a personal video. It's going to be one of my 2024 update for y'all, both in terms of my personal life, which I've had massive changes, and also my business update as well. And then after that, I'm going to share with you some reflections that I have learned through my life and business experiences over this past year. And my big goal in sharing a video like this is that the journey is not always about highlights. It's also about the challenges and the struggles, but it's just that a lot of people don't actually talk about these challenges and struggles on social media, in public, because we all sort of just go through it in our own private lives because it's not fun, it's not easy to talk about, and sometimes it's associated with embarrassment or shame. And I have felt all of these things in the experiences I've had over the past year. It's been a very tough but rewarding year for me. And so by showing you an insight into what I've really been going through, I hope that I can show you that you're not alone in this entrepreneurial journey, and that I think that a lot of us are actually very similar in the things that we're experiencing. I actually shared a little bit, like tidbits of here and there, about my life on my Instagram, and the wave of DMs I got, especially when I was at my low, sharing the stuff that was really challenging for me, actually made me feel so much less alone, and that people actually really understood me. So I want to just be able to give back and share with you what I've been going through, so that you also feel like you've got a friend on this journey who understands you as well. All right, so let's talk about my life update. So the big life event that happened in my 2024 is that I moved from Melbourne to London. So the reason why I moved to London is based on many reasons, actually. I would say that after selling my business, Lisa's Study Guides, I started TutorBoss, my coaching business to help tutors scale their own businesses. And while I love what I do, I guess it's still doing business, and I've already done that leap of quitting my pharmacy job into working for myself, and I've basically worked for myself for 10 years now. And so once I'd actually grown that initial business and sold it, I moved into TutorBoss, and I kind of realized I'm almost going to be doing the same thing again, of building a business up, and then eventually, I don't know what I'll do with it. I don't know if I'll sell it or not, but it's almost like a rinse and repeat in a way. And so while that's completely okay, I think I just wanted something that would be a little bit more invigorating and exciting in my life, because to be honest, like, this is kind of how I see the rest of my life. I see myself building multiple businesses and having different eras of my life be different businesses that I work on. Like, I have found my forte. I have found the thing that I love. I found my Ikigai, and that's business. The actual content of the business doesn't necessarily matter as much. Like, obviously, I want to make sure that what I'm doing in my work is aligned with me, and that I love what I do, that I love teaching. I know I'll always probably be teaching, but the type of business models and what I provide as a service or as a product is probably going to change over the years. And so with that sort of rinse and repeat mindset, I was thinking, well, I could do this in Melbourne, and if I keep doing this in Melbourne, everyone else around me is starting to get settled down. So I'm in my almost mid-30s, and it's just an era of life now where a lot of people are starting to think about having families, starting to have kids, and really work on that chapter of their lives. And for myself and for Josh, we're just not at that stage yet. And so to me, really, I was thinking to myself, well, do I kind of just do what I'm doing for the next 2-3 years and sort of wait and hope that I feel like I'm ready to have a family? Or can I maybe try and do something different? Can I try to do something during this period that I might not be able to do again in the future. And so last year, Josh and I went on a Europe trip. We visit our friends, and we have some really good friends who live here in London who are doing the working holiday visa, and that essentially means that as an Australian, you can move to the UK and work in the UK for up to 3 years. And so Josh and I thought to ourselves, you know what? This actually sounds like a great idea. Why don't we do this? Because we're young, we have disposable income, we're fit and healthy, so we can go and travel and do all these amazing, extraordinary things that we wouldn't be able to do day to day. Go hiking up in the mountains and just spend our money on traveling, essentially. And so that's what we committed to. We committed to moving to London in July 2024, and I'm so happy that we actually executed on that and just made it happen. And genuinely, I would say that this has been one of the best decisions I have ever made. So for me, it's let's travel, let's make the most out of our youth, but also it's a reward. It's a reward that shows me, wow, look what you have built for yourself. Look at the life you've been able to build for yourself over the past 10, 15 years, ever since you graduated high school. The fact that you built your own business, you quit pharmacy, you were able to grow this business to a point where you could sell it, and then you have all this income and lump sum of the sale where you have the ability to make decisions like, I'm just going to uproot my life and move overseas and feel comfortable with the savings that you have in your bank account, and to know that moving in a city that's 2 times more expensive than what Melbourne is, that I'm actually capable of doing that. Like, I think that's freaking awesome. Although I do want to bookmark this and tell you down the track that I actually start to feel really stressed about the money side of things. But we'll talk about that in just a moment. So I was kind of wrong there. But anyways, this was kind of, my vision for myself. And this is what I was thinking when I was about to make the move. And so ever since I've actually made the move, I have really enjoyed myself. I loved just being able to pack up everything, leave Australia with literally 2 suitcases and a bag, small bag, and to set up my life again in London and to reestablish my community, make new friends, learn the ways of London or England, like how the post office works, where I go to print stuff, how food delivery works, all of that. I think in each of these examples, there's always a challenge that comes with it. And being able to overcome that challenge and seeing it from the other side, you feel so rewarded. Like the fact that you can pack up everything you have and put it into just 2 to 3 bags, 2 to 3 suitcases, and to know that, hey, like this is all I need in my life. Whoa, like that's not very much at all. And so that was one big reward, but then also getting here, finding a place to rent, being able to navigate that property industry, figuring out like the pricing of the rental, what actually made sense for the area that we're looking in and for the specs that we're looking in, and being able to negotiate and then be able to put down an offer and then have that offer accepted when you literally are starting from scratch. Like that feels really rewarding in itself. So if you're somebody who's thinking of moving overseas, I really encourage you to do it. Like I know it's really scary thinking about that idea of the unknowns, and there are so many unknowns, but like the reward is so huge for you taking that risk. Now, this is the highlight reel. This is when you look at my Instagram, you're going to see so many photos of me traveling and I'm having a lot of fun. But at the same time, I have had probably one of the most toughest chapters of my life. Apart from me selling the business, that was another really difficult chapter. I would say this is one that contends with it. And that is purely because I did this all to myself. I put the pressure on myself. I thought it would be a good idea, which looking back, it is not a good idea. I thought that during my move to London, I should also buy another property. So if you don't know my property journey, so far I have my own home with Josh, and then I have 4 investment properties up until July of 2024. And it's always been a big dream of mine to set myself up for my retirement by having the 5th property. And I've always told myself, once I wrap up this final property, that's it for me. Like, I don't want to look at any more houses. I don't want to talk to any more mortgage brokers. I don't want to carry out another loan. I am done, because I was already starting to get a little bit tired of this, but like the whole process of buying a house, because it is pretty intense, and we'll talk about this in just a moment. But for me to feel really comfortable in my retirement, where I don't need to rely on the government pension, where if I need to look after my partner and my kids, then I could do so. For me, the value of that meant having 4 investment properties in total. We don't count the one where I live in, because that would eventually generate me income to satisfy my lifestyle and me supporting my family members. And so because I had just sold Lisa Study Guides, I did have a big lump sum of money. And so I thought, well, rather than me letting this sit in the bank, or alternatively, yes, I could invest it in stocks, but because I've built up a property portfolio, I understand property, I understand the process, I figured, you know what, I'm going to just buy my final property and then I'll be done with it. And so I had actually been thinking about buying this property all the way since, like, before I even sold my business. Like, this has been a long-term plan of mine. I am a planner, and I am also an executor. So I like to stick to what I plan, and then I just do it. So to be honest, like, I've been on this property journey all the way since I was like 23. I bought my first property when I was 23, and then I started to really refine my plan, my financial plan for my future in my late 20s. And then I was just like gunning for it. I just started to purchase properties and really make it happen for myself so I could set myself up for my future. And so last year, after I had sold the business, I sold the business in January 2023, I wanted to buy the house, but I think things just put me in a place where I wasn't feeling mentally ready. I didn't feel like I had the capacity to do so. I was just starting TutorBoss, and we were really picking up in traction. So it was keeping me really busy, and it just took a while, I think, for the sale of LSG to like kind of settle in terms of taxes that needed to be paid, and like the financial side of things with my accountant, to be recorded on paper, all of that. So I did need to wait for a while, and then I eventually realized that I had the capacity to purchase this property probably around May this year, 2024. And so that really started to coincide with me making the move to London. I really started packing and organizing for London probably like April, May, and then we did the move end of June 2024. And I just sort of figured that, okay, well, I'm doing the move now to London. At that point in time, I actually shut down TutorBoss. So what I mean by shut down is that I basically told all of my clients that I wasn't going to be working, and I was taking time off for a couple of months just while I was making the move, and I wasn't doing any sales at all. So that's what I mean by shut down. And this is actually going to become relevant in another chapter in this video, because that decision caused me a lot of financial stress moving on. But yes, so with the property, I thought, well, I'm moving to London, like now is the time, like let's just purchase this property now. I did think at the time, like maybe this is a lot to be both moving overseas and to be purchasing a property, but I thought to myself, it should be fine. And because I just figured once I move to London, like I'll set up my business again, and it'll be a pretty smooth process. Except that it wasn't a smooth process at all. So what I didn't realize when it came to purchasing this property is because I'm buying this property in Australia and I've moved to London, time zones make communication incredibly challenging. So when you move overseas, especially if you're moving to the other side of the world where our nighttime is Australia's daytime and our daytime is Australia's nighttime, it just means that there's a very small window of that 9 to 5 business hours where you can actually call up and have a conversation with somebody. So my 6 a.m., for example, would be someone's 5 p.m. in Australia. So I'd have to wake up really early to try to contact somebody. And if I'm not able to contact them, then it's almost like I've missed them for that day. It's either I wake up really early or I stay up really late. And if I stayed up really late, then I could try to catch them in the early hours of the morning. But if I didn't and they called me back, then maybe I'd be asleep by then. So that actually posed quite a bit of challenge for us because I had a buyer's agent who was helping me find the property, and essentially we lost a few opportunities of houses I could have bought because of that delay in communication. And when you're buying a property, things need to happen pretty quickly. Like you commit to a verbal offer, you got to put it on contract, and then you give it to the vendor and you negotiate from there. And it has to happen quite fast because there are probably other people that you're competing with. Except that with me, things were happening quite slowly. And so that caused a bit of frustration with my property agent or my buyer's agent, which is totally fair enough. But it was also frustrating for me as well because I was literally in the midst of moving, and I think that I did not fully appreciate how overwhelming the move could be, and just how much I actually needed to do in terms of admin, setting up my medicals here in London, setting up my security number and all of those government things, and even just getting comfortable with the space, buying all the furniture, and just while you're at it, you also want to explore, like you want to have fun. Everything's so new and everyone is new. So it was really hard for me to find that balance. But eventually we were able to find a property after essentially 3 months of looking. It should have only taken 1, but it actually ended up taking 3 because I was just so busy. And then when I found the property, as you can see, this video is more just me sharing with you what's been going on in my life. And I appreciate you if you're here watching this and listening. And honestly, if you are, I'd love for you to comment. It would mean so much to me just to let me know that videos like this actually matter to somebody out there. I purchased the property, and what made it even more challenging is that the papers weren't sent to me in London, they were sent to me in Australia. And so it was a whole kerfuffle of getting the documents signed. I had to pay 100 AUD to actually get the papers, like just a stack of papers, sent back to the bank in Australia. So I think what could have been quite easy had I been in Australia was actually just quite difficult because of multiple added challenges in that workflow of buying a house. And so that caused me a bit of stress. And in isolation, it's actually not that stressful. In isolation, it's actually fine. But it was the fact that it was compounded with the fact that I had just moved to London. And it was also compounded with the fact that it just so happened that one of my other properties, essentially, I thought had turned itself into a meth lab. Yes. So during July, one of the tenants from my other properties started defaulting on her rent. We've had issues with her in the past, with her being in arrears for the rent, but things really culminated to a head when it was her time to leave the property and she refused to. And because of the way that the laws are set up, you can't just evict somebody straight away. You have to go through court orders and court hearings and go through a process. And what had triggered my red alarm bells was that in the last inspection I had seen, she had for some reason punched holes in the walls. Or actually, I didn't know if it was the tenant. I didn't know what was happening. And the walls had some weird coloring on it, and it just felt like something not quite right was going on in the property. And so the property manager recommended that I don't renew the lease with this tenant and that I let them go and find a new tenant. And I had found a new tenant, which was amazing. But when the tenant was supposed to move in, this old tenant still hadn't left. And so we had to go through this court hearing, and it was essentially like 2 months of waiting. And then finally, the police had to come and evict the tenant. And when that happened, I got the final inspection report, the exit inspection report, and the place was a complete mess. We thought that potentially there had been meth that had been happening in the house, which would have been really expensive, because if there is meth in a house that's been used, it stains the walls, it seeps into the walls, and so for anybody who moves in afterwards, it can actually be a health hazard. And so you have to actually pay somebody like $10,000, $15,000 to actually decontaminate the place. And so this is all happening while I'm moving to London, and I've got all these expenses of starting my life afresh in London. You know, buying things like bowls, buying things like furniture, bedding, towels, all of that. And then I was also purchasing my other property, and now I suddenly had this extra stress and weight of, oh my gosh, I'm both losing out on rent here, paying a mortgage out of my own pocket, and there's also repairs that are going to be needed. And the repairs, essentially, when we looked at everything, it could potentially total up to another $10,000. And so all these things happening at one time is what really stressed me out and what really made me feel quite overwhelmed. And I think, to be fair, like that's fair, right? Like that's a lot of life changes that are happening all at the one time. And I think for myself, I had already planned, you know, this is how much things are going to probably cost me when I move to London. This is how much it's going to cost me to buy a new property. And that was okay. But then to have this added on top of that, that wasn't part of the equation, you know? And so because it wasn't part of the equation, it was really stressful. And I still did have money saved away, which made it okay. But in contention with this, I also had struggles with my business after I moved to London. So let's move into the business update of this video, because then you'll get a better sense of how I was feeling throughout both these domains, life and business. And you'll understand how I'll be feeling across the moving to London, the purchasing of the property, the meth house, we're just going to call it, and then contending with the business as well. So I mentioned how I had shut down my TutorBoss business so that I could focus on the move. And after a month of sorting out my move here in London, the idea was that I would start back up with TutorBoss. Once I started my business in London, things would literally just kick right back up to where they were prior to me shutting the business down. So I figured that my income from the business would be exactly the same, and that would make me very comfortable living in London. But boy, oh boy, was I wrong. I was wrong. And I guess this is a really big lesson. Maybe I'll save this for reflections part, but I'm somebody who is, as you know, like I'm a planner. I think ahead and I strategize and then I execute. But a lot of things actually didn't go according to plan for me, and it resulted in a lot of stress. I've learned a lot from it, but to circle back to what's happening with the business. So TutorBoss as a business is an incredible business. I get to work with incredible people, tutoring business owners who are either starting or scaling their tutoring businesses. Now, because this business is a baby business, in my opinion, I started it about 3 years ago now, but I haven't been working in it full time. I started it while I was still doing LSG, so it was just a side thing that I was doing for maybe 10 hours a week. I definitely had a capacity that I couldn't go anymore and work anymore beyond, and I really wanted to respect that capacity. You know, there was only so much time I could dedicate to this TutorBoss business. And so over the years, as I've sold my business, I've gradually increased the amount that I'm working in this business and working on scaling it. But I think for me, my philosophy in building business now is so much more different from when I was a younger version of me. I'm very much about sustainable, strategic growth. And to me, business isn't my entire life. I say that because I want that to be the case. In reality, I do think about business a lot because it's exciting, it's interesting, and there are so many problems to be solved in it. But that's also a reason why I moved to London, right? I want to live life. I want to explore. I want to travel. I want to build core memories with Josh and with new friends. And that's also really important to me. So I don't want to be tied to my desk working all the time. And so because it's a baby business, it's not at the point where I was like with Lisa Study Guides, where I literally only worked in the business 5 hours a week, and then the rest of it I was off doing whatever I wanted to, and I was still making money from the business. It's not like that with TutorBoss. I'm not at that stage yet, and I'm okay with that. That's completely fine. I'm happy for that to come down the track. But for now, it is very much about me putting in the work. It's me showing up to my client calls and doing my one-on-one coaching. It's me showing up to my masterclasses that I hold. It's me showing up to any group coaching calls that I hold. And that's also okay with me, because what I've learned from LSG is that when you're at the top of the ladder as the CEO and you're not in the day-to-day, it's actually not as fulfilling, for me at least. I actually really like being a part of the groundwork, actually seeing my clients, seeing them grow, seeing them make aha moments for themselves, seeing them be successful. That's what personally gives me a lot of fulfillment, which is why regardless of how I will scale, my intention is that I'm always going to keep doing client calls. Is that the most scalable thing? No, the most scalable thing, as we all know, is to create a SaaS product and then sell that, right? But I think for me personally, this is just what I like, and I've figured that out, and I'm okay with that time, money sacrifice. I'm okay to not be making as much as I could be with a SaaS product, because this is just what I like. And so because I'm at this stage in business, what that means is that if I take time off work, if I am sick, it means I don't necessarily make the money. And that is unfortunately the con of where I'm at. I get the pro of feeling really fulfilled, and the con is that unfortunately when things aren't happening because I'm not happening in the business, then the money won't be generated as well. And so that was okay, because I was like, you know what? I've got money in the savings. It's fine. I'll make this move. And then once I get to London, we'll just get started again. And so when I actually started the business again, my mistake that I made is that I actually decided to increase my expenses at the same time. So TutorBoss is at a level in business now where I'm ready to have a team. And basically from May through to December, I have since hired 3 core people for my team, which means that we now have a team of 4 people in TutorBoss, which is crazy. Like, that is actually amazing, and that is scale within itself, right? But what happens when you first start hiring team members, like the whole point of you hiring team members is so that you can scale, so that you can up level into that next chapter, because I cannot possibly do everything myself. Like, we're getting leads, we're getting customers, but I am the bottleneck, absolutely 100% the bottleneck. And so this is like what I work with my tutoring business owner clients as well, because they do all the tutoring, or you do all the tutoring, and then you get to a point where you're like, I'm at capacity, like I want to be able to grow, but I am the limit here. And so I was experiencing that in TutorBoss. And the good thing is that because I have created Lisa Study Guides before, I've gone through that journey of knowing how to take myself out of the business, of knowing how to hire, how to delegate. I was like, let me just do the same thing with TutorBoss. Okay. So then I started doing that, but what that meant was that my expenses dramatically increased. I think I was expensing maybe close to $3,000 AUD per month, which is like £1,500, which is probably equivalent to maybe 2,000 USD. I'm getting really good with the currency conversions because a lot of my clients are from the US. I now live in the UK for pounds, and then also Australian dollars. So my expenses jumped from 3,000 AUD up to 10,000 AUD in the space of like a couple of months. And this was different from LSG because when I started hiring tutors, you only need to pay your tutors as contractors. They were contractors for me. I only needed to pay them when they actually did the work. So that was fine because there were no ongoing expenses. Whereas in TutorBoss, because I'm hiring an internal team, I have marketers on my team. And so I have assistants on my team. And so I'm constantly putting out money for them so that they can do their work. The struggle was that both having so many expenses go out and then needing to start back up the company again, I found that because I was starting back up the company again, it actually took a little bit longer than expected for that income to start rolling in. So there was a period of time of about 3 months or so where the income was lower than what I would typically expect, just because we're starting back up, but also my expenses were higher. And so, oh man, I was really stressed. I was stressed because London is 2 times more expensive than Australia, as I've mentioned. And that just means that everything is more expensive and I need to be able to make more money as a result to afford my lifestyle here. So if we circle back to the holistic picture of Lisa's life in 2024, essentially, I had just moved to London, and what they say when you move overseas, for anyone who's thinking of moving overseas, or if you have moved overseas before, I'm sure you can relate to this, it takes a good 6 months for you to really feel settled. And I completely agree. It's been close to 6 months now. We're at like the 5-month mark, and I can feel it. Like, I can feel that I'm finally starting to feel a bit more settled, but there's still a little bit more to go for me to feel fully settled. And it's just small things like making sure that, look, I've got like a little blanket now that keeps me warm during the winter because it gets really cold here. I'm not used to that. It's things like I have a thermos bottle now to drink hot water throughout the day so that I don't need to use as much electricity so that I can keep myself warm. It's like things to make yourself comfortable. I think it really just takes time. And so moving was one part. The second part was buying the property and actually having that entire process done. We actually just settled the house yesterday. Oh my gosh, it took 5 months in total for this to happen. And so, wow, like what a journey. I'm like so glad that it's just another thing that's off my shoulders. And then the third thing was the meth house, right? So we're actually still in the messy middle with that. We're still basically going through with the insurance claim. So the good news is that I am going to get some of my losses covered so far, and they will pay for some of the damages, but I'm just not sure exactly how much yet. So we're still in that process. And one thing that I've learned from that is that my agent, my property manager, was terrible. Absolutely terrible. And I think if you're somebody who owns a property and your property manager takes it doesn't respond to you, doesn't communicate with you, is not proactive, and they take 4 weeks to get quotes to actually lodge an insurance claim, you need to move on. And so I've just found a new property agent who's just sent out the email today to take over that property. So that's good. Like, we're moving along. But then on top of that, I needed to restart up my business again. I was expensing a lot of money, and so I was building up my team and getting my team comfortable and productive so that we could be at a state where we were generating income. Like, obviously, I'm spending on my staff so that I can have a return on investment. But that return on investment, there's always going to be a delay. So if you end up hiring people, just know that productivity of your entire team, including yourself, actually drops. So when you first hire somebody, you need to train them. And so that means that that's time that you could have been using for something else in your business, building it, scaling it, but you need to now focus on your team. So your productivity drops, and your new staff members, like, they're a bit slow in the beginning just because they're learning everything. So then there's always a lag time between them starting to them being super efficient and you getting a return on investment with that person that you've hired. So just as like an FYI. And so all of this was happening in the one time. And honestly, it was too much for me. It was way, way too much. And I think that part of it was my fault. I think that I often overestimate I think we're moving into the reflections part of this video, by the way. I think that I often overestimate my capacity of how much I can handle. And I think if we go real deep, I think a lot of that stems from my childhood and the way that I've been brought up. And I have that immigrant Asian hustle mentality that I saw of my parents. And it's not like they've ever pushed me to go down this track of working really hard. Like, they never really forced that on me, but it's what I saw of them. Like, my parents, they started their own business when they moved to Australia. They hustled from morning through to the evenings. I would go to their shop after work and I'd be there until 9 p.m. and then we would go home. So I've just seen my parents do that. And I think because that's what I've seen, it's also what I think I should be doing subconsciously as well. And so I often, without even consciously realizing it, to be honest, I overload myself. I always think I can do more and add more to my plate. I think the biggest lesson that I've learned from this is that it's really important that we respect our bodies and that we respect how much we can actually do at one time. And although our brains might be like, yes, 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 you can absolutely do that, I think our body really sends us that signal of whether or not you truly can handle it or not. And even though my brain was like, yeah, all right, cool, like, I'm going to work harder in my business so I can get my team up to scratch. I'm going to deal with this meth house after hours. And I'm also going to do the paperwork for this house. And while I'm doing that, I'm also going to, buy myself more comfortable clothes in London so that I can face the London winter. Like, yes, I can do all of that, but my body is telling me that I'm stressed. My body is telling me that I'm overwhelmed. And I think in the past, I didn't used to be as connected to my body. I used to just like run on logic and my brain and what I wanted, rather than sitting with myself and being like, is this actually healthy for you? Is this how you actually want to live your life? And I think that all the way up until in my 30s, I've always put myself under a certain level of stress. Like I'm used to having a big workload. And when I say workload, I don't just mean business. Like as you can see with all these different buckets, like it's anything in life that you're committing yourself to. I'm used to a certain level of stress, but like I'm realizing that that's also like kind of not okay. You know, it's not okay. And it's not a thing that I want to be proud of anymore. I don't want to be proud of like, look how much I can handle, look how much I can do at one time, because I don't think it's worth it. And I think that in my situation, some things I could have controlled and I probably could have respected a little bit better, like probably acknowledged that the move to London might have been a little bit more challenging than I would have thought, and actually gave myself room for that breathing space if it was more challenging. Maybe when it came to the property, had I thought of it like that, I might have actually been to myself, you know what? Don't buy the property yet. Maybe buy it in like 6 months' time. What's 6 months in the grand scheme of things? Not that long. But instead, I kind of just went, yeah, I can do all of it. I can do absolutely all of it. So it's fine. But then challenges came that were also unexpected, that added to that stress, like the meth house, which I had no control over. But had I gave myself that breathing space of moving to London, had that meth house happened and not me buying the property, maybe I would have actually been so much better at navigating and dealing with all of this. So that's the first big lesson that I've learned. The second big lesson that I've learned is about the messy middle. So I am now in that messy middle. I am not at the very end where with the business, I feel fully comfortable with the income that is coming in. We're getting close to there. So the good news is that now 5-6 months down the track, we're actually in a place now where I'm no longer stressing out about the business. I think my team is working productively. I have such a great team and we're making stuff happen, you know, and the business is actually ready for, like, we're actually on track to potentially doubling how much we were making last year. So basically we went through that dip of a period of when I shut down the business, and then an even bigger dip of me increasing the expenses. But now, because I trusted that process and I went through that messy middle, now I actually get to see that benefits, like the return on investment that I was talking about. But when you're in that messy middle, it feels like the worst, because you're just like, when is this going to end? And the only thing you can really say to yourself is like, I trust that this is going to work. I trust that the universe is going to align things for me, because if you didn't have that faith and belief in yourself and what you do, then you're going to give up in that messy middle, you know? So I've been feeling that messy middle with the business. With the meth house, I'm still in that messy middle because we haven't gotten the insurance claim, we haven't fixed up the house, we haven't gotten new tenants in. But once we get new tenants in, I'm going to feel another like sigh of relief that's off my shoulders. And I've just settled my property, the 5th property that I purchased, and like you can see, like everything's kind of coming towards the end of that messy middle for me now, which is why I thought actually this is really great timing for this video, because it sort of wraps up my 2024. I'm really looking forward into my 2025 and sort of breathing a big breath of fresh air, essentially. So with this settlement, basically I've already got tenants in there, but we'll just need to renew their lease coming up in January. So I think once that's done, then I will be fully done with that. And like I mentioned before, with the move to London, it takes about 6 months for you to feel really settled. And I'm not at that 6 month yet. I'm at the 5 month mark. And so, you know, we're getting there. We're getting towards the end. And what I've learned about the messy middle is that it feels shit. It feels shit when you're in it. And I think it's recognizing and not just like shoving it off as, oh, like everything's fine, I'm going to be fine. But it's like sitting with it and saying to yourself, you know what? I'm having a really hard time. And when I was honest about this and when I was really vulnerable about it in my emails and on my Instagram stories, I can't believe how many of you all actually messaged me and shared with me how relatable a lot of what I was experiencing was for you all. I thought to myself, I didn't want to share any of this because I was like, this is a rich girl's problem. Like, I don't know why I just went American there. What? So, rich girl's problem. Anyways, so the fact that I can move overseas, the fact that I am buying new property, the fact that one of my properties is having issues, the fact that when it came to my business, it wasn't that my business was struggling necessarily because we weren't making any money, but because I was choosing to expense that money on a team. I just felt like, who am I to complain? You know, like, this isn't something that people should complain about, but I was genuinely so stressed. I lost nights of sleep, and I just figured, you know what? I really felt compelled to share it because I was like, people don't share these lowlights of their lives. And so when I shared it, wow, like the response was incredible, and it just made me realize that a lot of us, like, we do well for ourselves, and a lot of you are smart people who are building your future lives. Like, you are building your nest egg, you're building a retirement egg. You understand and you see that future for yourself just like me. Like, we're not very dissimilar at all. And so that's why I want to share with you this, because I feel like maybe on the outside, fair enough, like I think I am successful in a lot of ways. And I think when people look at me, they say, yeah, she's successful. But I think that journey to isn't all like, it's really hard. And it can be hard. Even on that journey of becoming even more successful, you go through these really stressful periods, which is what I essentially went through recently. Like, you're not immune to that just because you are successful to some degree. Give yourself grace and compassion that you will be okay at the end of this, and that it is okay for you to feel all the shitty feelings that you're feeling right now, the overwhelm, the stress, the anxiety, the frustration. But I think what really helped me was just recognizing that I know that things will get better. I know that this is just a period of time in my life, and that these messy middles is essentially what helps you build resilience and helps you grow as a person, and is a moment in time that actually forces you or challenges you to step into that better version of yourself. So do you really want to face this with sitting with that stress and putting that stress on the loved ones around you? Or can you use this moment in time as an exercise of, how do I try to be more present? How do I look after myself? How do I introduce more self-care in the day so that I can feel better, and so that I don't actually end up taking out my stress on a loved one? That's my big takeaway there. Really embracing that growth and change. And honestly, I'm so excited to meet that version of me, that future version of me. I'm so excited to meet her in a month's time, in 6 months' time, because I know that all of this crap that I've been going through, that it's helping me self-actualize. It's helping me step more into the version of myself that the future me will look back and be like, damn, I'm proud of her. I'm proud of how she handled that. I'm proud of her resilience. I'm proud of the growth she went through. The next thing I learned is setting boundaries. So I think that I push my own boundaries. It's not other people who are enforcing themselves and ignoring my boundaries. I think I need to respect my own boundaries. And I think this is a conversation I don't think a lot of people have, which is why I really want to plant this as a seed for you. But if you're somebody who sees yourself in me, where you push yourself to the limits and you push yourself by overloading yourself, by doing a lot, you're tired, but you keep pushing through the work, you get to burnout, but you still keep going, like, is that really how you want to live your life? I think to me, success now is not about how much money I make. It's not about how many properties I have. It's more about, do I have a sense of peace? Do I have a sense of relief and just feeling really good about my day and not putting that invisible pressure on myself to constantly perform? And I think maybe there are cycles in our lives where there are eras where you may need to hustle more. And I know hustle has, turned into a negative, it has negative connotations now. But for a lack of a better word, I think that there are periods in our lives where we probably do need to hustle a little bit more. And that was me over the past 6 months. Like, I was in a certain position and I just needed to get through it. And throughout getting through it, there were moments that I took a step back and I did slow down and I tried to look after myself. But when I had all those expenses going out in the business, I was hustling. I was pumping out the content. I was training my team. I was doing sales calls. Like, I was deep in the business and I was working long hours. I was pulling 9-hour days, which I don't do. If you know me, I don't do that stuff. I usually work like 20, 25-hour weeks and I'm happy. But I was hustling and now I'm finally starting to see the reward. So I'm starting to take a step back again. Maybe not right now. I'd say like maybe in about 2 months' time, I'm going to start to feel really, really comfortable. So I think when you look at your own life, I would encourage you to think about what boundaries are you setting right now and understand that boundaries can flex as well. So right now I'm pushing that boundary on the work element of things, but I know I'm going to refine that boundary again and put that marker of, no, there's not going to be any more 7 to 9 hour days. Let's go back to doing your 5-hour days because you're happy with that. And the last big reflection that I've made over the past 5-6 months, and hey, I guess that's why I made the move, right? I wanted to do something different for myself and live a new version of my life. And I certainly have been taught that through all of the challenges of experiencing, it's okay to accept slowing down. And I think that the old me used to think that success was pushing, and that things needed to be challenging for you to be successful. But I'm actually now getting more and more proof that the more I approach work with ease, the more I slow down and respect my limits. So instead of filming 5 videos a day, which I used to, I just filmed 1 today and I'm having fun, like I'm chill, I'm leaning back, I'm sitting on the floor, like this feels good to me. And honestly, my throat is starting to hurt a little bit. So I'm going to call it a day after this. And I think it's those micro decisions that you make that actually help your future self. And no, I'm not as productive today because I didn't film as many videos. But I know that by giving myself the chance to rest, that rest in itself is productive, and that I'm going to show up tomorrow feeling well rested. And when I'm well rested, I feel more creative. I'm more compassionate to my team members. I'm more empathetic to my clients rather than just feeling exhausted and burnt out and not really enjoying myself. So that's it for this video. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate you for tuning in to my life update. Honestly, when I was procrastinating this video, I'll be really, really honest. I was just like, I don't think anyone's going to listen to this. What do I want to say? Am I just going to ramble on? But this video was more just honestly a journal entry and a way for me to share with you the real happenings of my life. I have a lot that I'm grateful for. I'll be honest. I have a lot that's going for me. But I've also experienced some really tough times recently. And so 2024 has been the year of the highest of highs, but also the lowest of lows. I've never felt financially stressed ever in my life, to be honest. And it was the first time that I really started to feel that. And I think it's interesting because the takeaway is like now I can better relate to people who are feeling financially stressed. Whereas before I was just like, that really sucks, but I don't I don't really feel and connect with you on that. Whereas even though it's a really shitty experience, now I can actually walk away and have that shared experience and have that shared knowing with someone else. And I know that that's going to make me a better coach. I know that's going to make me a better partner. I know that's going to make me a better friend. And so, yeah, I'd love for you to comment, please, anything that you've taken away from this video, if anything has resonated with you, because that just helps me. And it motivates me to create more of these videos in the future. I might do another one in 2025 as my annual review. But other than that, I will continue sharing more of my stories, my travel on my Instagram. So if you're not following me there, feel free to. And I hope you all have had an amazing Christmas. I hope you have a great New Year. I'm going to Morocco for the New Year's, which is absolutely crazy. And I will be seeing you in 2025 for an epic year. I can already sense it. All right.